Welcome back to Hacker Hangouts on another Saturday morning, jumping into a couple different stories because when you start out hacking, we'll say hacking, it's a very broad topic because at the end of the day, it's the pursuit of enjoy. What is it? What was the RFC, Gourry? Do you have it pulled up? It was having fun, enjoying the pursuit of knowledge. And when you get started in this field, it's really hard to know where the right information is, where it's not. And then because it's such a new field, it feels like the landscape's kind of moving all the time. So we wanted to get together, talk about some of our backgrounds, where we go to learn, and some of the journeys along the ways. Because is it a degree? Is it certs? And then when you get certs, you have to maintain them with CPEs and continuing education credits, and it just becomes kind of this mess, and there's so many pitfalls of it. And I mean, it's throwing out the first question, which is, when you first jumped in this field, is this just me, or was it just massively confusing knowing where to go for what pieces of information?
Yeah, I mean, so I got to do a guest lecture up at Northeastern University at one point talking about the cybersecurity industry as a whole and what that means. And I always like to start it off with whenever anybody says, I want to get into cybersecurity or I want to get into cyber, they need to just realize what they are saying is, I want to get into computers, right? Because you can replace the word cyber with computery and lose no value, right? Like cyber, security defense is just computer security defense. Like, what does that mean? What does cyber mean? Cyber doesn't really mean anything other than computer. So getting into the field and, the easiest way to understand how to figure out what information you need is actually to be far more specific. Do you want to be a pen tester? Do you want to be a software developer? Do you want to be a software assessment person? Do you want to be, dig a little bit further in? Now that's complicated because you don't really know what you're going to enjoy doing until you get there, which means you got to try a bunch of things quickly, fail out of the things that you dislike and excel at the things that you do like. And that kind of is, when you're younger, that's kind of the purpose of college, right? Gives you that opportunity to try many different things in many different domains very quickly.
And I guess I'll double down on this because this actually fell into a conversation we had during our kind of impromptu conversation. Was you kind of have three stages to your learning path and then a couple choices in between. You have the get going, get good, and get smart. Where get going is just get going, get learning, especially it doesn't matter whether it's hacking or cybersecurity or YouTube. Just get going, start learning, because the biggest talent you can teach yourself is how to learn, where to go and get going. I think after you've got going, you create Try Hack Me, you started playing around, figuring out what the area of expertise I can have a job in, area of expertise that I actually enjoy, and start finding that sweet spot. I think then you get to that get good, which is, let's remove all of the noise, we'll say, and I can focus on this one particular area. Does that kind of make sense, going from get going to get good, we'll say?
Yeah, I would say so. When it comes to the get going, when I was looking to try to get into the industry, it was a bit tough because I live in a small town. Okay, there's a community college, but there weren't that many programs available at the time talking about cybersecurity or health. This whole Linux thing is no, we only teach Windows here. Go, what are you doing? Right? So with that, it's it was really the pursuit of knowledge by going and getting different books, finding different online forums, and then just trying. So you said Hack the Box or Try Hack Me. These resources have come along over time, which are fantastic. So this is a good place to start. And I've talked about in the past where I always thought to become a good pen tester, it would be better for you to go back and say, hey, do I know how to build something? So going the sysadmin route, and then slowly over time learning how to defend that, and then how to go offensively after it. Because if you know how to build it, you know how it works, then you're able to start understanding it at a deeper level. Or tell people how to go through and fix the issue as well.
Well, and that's a lot different than my background was, because my background was started video game hacking, not really knowing how any of it worked. And maybe this is probably the best place to start, which is back when, because your journey, Gator, was really different from ours, because you were a cabinet maker, and then you transitioned over using certs and kind of like a program of certs, where I got a degree in network security, but that was after I had some of the baser knowledge of, we'll say, video game hacking. I think, Gourry, you were about the same as me, where you went after a computer science degree, didn't you?
So I did about 6 years of network security on the job during my Navy days. So I picked up all of that stuff not through a degree program, but through, just on the job training basically, and the training that the Navy provided me. And then after I finished, I basically took a course that was teaching me how to be a software engineer, and that's when I decided, like, damn, I really like this. So I'm pulling chalks and I'm going to university to learn how to, become a computer scientist, if you will. And that's kind of where I am today. And that's, but it took me, like, I was a non-traditional student. It took me failing through, like, realizing I don't want to be a pen tester. I don't want to be a network security analyst. I don't want to do these things, not because I don't think that those positions are valuable, but because I just didn't enjoy them. Right. And when I started building things, I found I enjoyed it. And so that's what I went towards. So, yeah, that's kind of my background.
I think, like, part of it is when you're diving in. Gulo, for you, actually, because you're kind of a jack of all trades, and you're now doing, like, VR engineering. What was your background? Like, where did you get a lot of what you're looking at? Was it at university, or did you go through a cert program, or did you just start tinkering?
I went to college for psychology and theology. So that I specifically went to college to learn how to better myself and screw with people more. And it actually worked pretty well. But I'm old school. I started hacking back in the BBS days of dial-up. I was popping boxes on BBS way back when.
So
and this was before...
I was going to say, so this is jumping in, like, you're saying, oh, you're popping boxes doing that, but, like, how did you learn that? There wasn't, like, easy places to go. Okay, there wasn't great ways to become a professional developer, like copying and pasting from Stack Overflow, because we all know that's what it takes to be a professional developer.
There wasn't books, there wasn't YouTube. I couldn't even use the Dewey Decimal System to figure out a lot of this stuff. When I started programming and, like, COBOL and stuff, I had to figure that stuff out from the ground up, and it was a lot of trial and error. So I don't have the formal education or the formal certifications that these guys have. Mine is 100% grassroots of how do I figure this crap out, because I was on the internet before the internet existed as it is today. I couldn't find information. It was, hey, there's a password prompt. What random crap can I do to get past this password prompt? Oh, cool. Now I'm connected to a VAX system. What the hell is VAX? What are the commands? Is there help command?
This was BG, the BG period, the before Google period, when Dogpile and Ask Jeeves were, like, the best resources when search engines weren't really a thing. So if
like, go get it.
This is before Dogpile, and this was before Alta Vista. This was web crawler days. Web crawler was the Google, and that was the only search engine back then, was web crawler.
So, and depending on web rings, right?
Yeah, GeoCities, AngelFire, yeah, the good old days.
So, like, jumping in today, though, I feel I think it's gotten better from the degree program standpoint, because when I was going through, like, offensive security, the whole field is remarkably new, and I think we can all acknowledge that. We even talked about it in our last live stream, but I think degree programs have gotten better, but they still feel really general if you're wanting to go specific. So, like, if you were trying to learn today, like, where do you think certifications fit within, we'll say, like, overall continuing education? Are they good things to just jump into the field? And let's talk about, like, even general ones, like A+ and Security+.
So that's where I'll jump in and say, I learned a lot of my stuff by going hands-on. And then when I went to try to get into the field, the employers are like, you have no formal training. How can we trust you? You need to go get this cert first. And then I went and studied for the cert, passed the cert, and then they're like, hey, now we can hire you type of a deal. So for me, it was more of a getting hands-on and tinkering, building machines. The A+, I was building machines before I went and took the A+ course, and then passed the course, and then went and passed the test. But that was just because that was a need for the employer I was looking at the time. So for me, it's always be driven by your passion to learn what you want to learn. Getting hands-on is going to help a lot. Sometimes getting hands-on with a course or the right course for you can be the tricky part, would be my 2 cents.
So I have a similar take. So I do have a couple of certs, I guess. They were from very early in my career when I really thought certifications mattered. I quit believing in. So I'll address what Silk said. So going out and getting a degree is something that I agree with to a certain extent, because generally I take a lot of college courses. I'm enrolled. I just completed a college course a couple of weeks ago. I'm enrolled in another one that I'm finishing up here in the next couple of weeks as well. I take courses to go learn things, and some of the courses that I take are really, really good courses, and I learn a lot. But most of the ones that I take have issues where I'm not. They're teaching me something that's super old because they're way behind what the industry is doing, and then there's the regurgitation of, we're going to lecture to you and you regurgitate that information back. But it all depends on how you take those courses. If you take those courses and you want to learn, then you can go through and learn outside of the course more about that subject matter. And that's how I think certs should work as well. They're really great frameworks. Certifications in college are great frameworks of what you should be learning. But if you're only doing what you need to get the certification, or only doing what you need to get the degree, I don't think that you're learning. I think you're looking for a piece of paper. And this is where the boot camps come in. And if you're taking a boot camp to get a certification, I don't think you know anything about that certification other than how to pass the test, which makes it pretty much invalid.
Yeah. I mean, so the way I like to put it is, this is the hard part for somebody coming into the industry who has none of it. It's kind of like, where do you start and what's the most effective way to start? And I'll give you the upside of college is it gives you a large array of things that you get exposed to quickly. And college is, so primary school, high school, all those things gives you the tools you need to operate in society. College gives you the tools you need to be able to teach yourself effectively, right? That's primarily what the goal of college is to teach you how to teach yourself, right? Which means rapidly moving from topic to topic that you've never been exposed to before and acquiring the skills you need to be able to pass the course and apply those in some way, right? Now, what you do after each of those courses with that knowledge, totally up to you. And that's where you get into like the professional career and what are you doing? Like the application portion, this is why there's a huge dichotomy between like you have a 4.0 GPA student who can't operate at, at a company despite having a computer science degree because they thought that the course was the goal as opposed to what do you do with the knowledge afterwards being the goal. So college kind of has this setup environment to give you that potential of experience to teach you how to teach yourself. Whereas if you don't, as Gulo said, if you don't have a goal in mind going into these boot camps or certifications or whatever, they're not going to give you the tools you need to learn yourself. You're going to learn one little tiny sliver of this area of expertise, and then you're going to try and use it. But there are so many areas that you don't have exposure to that it's going to be really difficult to be effective. And so this is kind of like the I guess what creates this problem for new people coming into the industry is, where do you start? And the hard part is you just start everywhere. You need to figure out what you can get quickly and get going, and then pick up as much as you can along the way. But you always have to look at, like, are certs useful? Yes, but don't ever pay for them. Have a company pay for them for you, right? Which is kind of a backwards thing, because usually you need the certs to just get in the door to get the job. And that's
right.
Like why the industry is so hard to quote unquote get into, is you have this, you have that, what is it? Chicken and egg problem, where I need the cert to get the job. But if I don't have the job to pay for the cert, how can I afford the cert and it becomes this money trap, right?
So for that, the chicken and the egg,
Catch
just become the
22.
lizard. If you're the lizard, go out and start studying for the certs that are required by those jobs so that you can put those random letters on your resume that you're studying for. And then that can help you get in the door because you don't have the cert, but no one's actually looking if you have the cert. They only care about the letters.
Yeah,
Another
that
piece, and the best piece of advice I've given to security people is don't completely rely on your tools. If you go out and you learn Metasploit's great, it's powerful. You can do all kinds of things. It has all kinds of everything to do what you want to do. Learn how the tool works. The first time that you click a button and that button doesn't do something is the first time that you've now failed a pen test. You've now failed doing something because you only knew that I opened up this program, I click on this button, and then it doesn't, if it
but
doesn't work, then it's failed.
I would argue that's how you learn, though. Like when you learn Metasploit and you learn Nmap, it's like, cool, I'm going to spin it up, I'm going to point it at a system and then run it. And you don't know how the underlying technology works. You get to that point where, wait, this isn't working how I was expecting. Okay, now let's see what was happening. With
Yes.
with certs, though, this is actually kind of interesting. And Gourry said this, like, I think really, really nicely, is have the company pay for it. Like, this is actually at my company, this is how, when a junior comes on who wants to get into pen testing, who's helping us with other things, we then pay for the OSCP for them if they're interested in it. I like that cert, but I like that cert for other reasons because I think it's a very generalist cert. Like, you get a lot of things, we'll say, on offensive security. But, like, weirdly enough, I have the A+ and Security Plus, and the only reason I got those was because in college I was required to do certain classes, and I could clip out of them with a $300 certification. So instead of paying $1,600 for the course or per credit hour, I could pay the $300 and not have to take that course, and then pay another $300 for the Security Plus. And I remember going through the A+ and Security Plus questions, and the way I passed those things, like the first time, was I went online, I went to one of like the question dumps and paid $60, got all of the questions, which I don't know how they get them, but it was word for word the actual question and the actual answer, up to and including like, it's going to be B. Like, even the answers were in the right order. So I went through that thing twice, memorized it, and then just went into the A+, ran it. This is actually like one of the reasons why I hate the CEH. No, again, the original CEH.
Right.
There was no lab time. There was no anything like that. You could go grab the dump and put it in there. And the questions were like these weird semantic like questions. Like, what is the proper flags to do an Xmas scan within Nmap? Like, something where you could easily hit the like, I'm going to throw out this as a question. Does everyone know every syntax thing for every program they use? Or do you still have to look at the man page?
I
still look at the man
every time.
Yeah, every time. Yeah. Like, even for tools I've used for forever, there's still like those random things where it's like, oh wait, how did they do this? Or the tool just constantly changes. And I think that's where the certs really fall apart. But then here's the next topic is so many of these certs. So you study. Let's say you actually get the knowledge to do it. It's a broader one. You have to study for it, or you're doing it at a company, they're paying for it, but you get the knowledge. Then there's like this weird requirement that you have to get like these, what they call it, CPEs, or these ongoing educational credits just to maintain this thing. Is that just a giant scam, or is that actually like a thing, we'll say?
Okay, I've got opinions on this one, and it's going to be hot takes because when I was getting into the field, I'm like, hey, I'm studying for this. I'm passionate about Linux. I want to get going, study for this Sec Plus. I paid for it by myself to be able to get into my first employer. I had to get it a couple times because I failed the first once or twice. Past that, I finally got the thing, and then I got to the point where I was able to help tutor it. The problem was when I got to the location, the older gentleman who was there hadn't touched a modern Linux in over 8 years, and yet was not administrating any of the boxes. So when it came to, hey, what do we need for this company to be able to continue to move forward, he was just out of touch. So with that, when I see the continuing education units, it is a money suck. Do not get me wrong. The problem is having the balance of making sure that did you just That's a fantastic comment. The problem is that there needs to be a balance, being able to keep your education current in the field, because InfoSec is constantly changing. I don't like how CompTIA or IC squared constantly just suck you for money, because for people who are doing it by themselves, that's the part that's hurtful to the industry. Not because you should be keeping up to date on your learning.
But by the way, for anyone who is like super confused where Gator just completely flipped horizontally, hacker was spelled backwards and was driving me nuts. So I'm amazed he was just able to continue on while I'm messing with his camera on my end. Go on, Gulo.
So as far as I completely agree with Gator. The CPEs, the CEUs, I think, in my opinion, are a waste of time and money because they become checkboxes. What is the simplest way that I can get these credits so that I don't have to worry about them? And then it becomes the standards that they have to go through, the things that you have to do to get those credits are now what your goal is, and your goal is no longer learning. Now, granted, you may get them, like if I needed them, I'm doing a podcast now, I'm doing a live stream, I'm pretty sure I get credit for this. I go to conferences, but I do that personally so that I can learn and grow as a person rather than doing it specifically for CEUs or CPEs, because I don't care about those. If I had a cert that required those, that cert would definitely lapse unless it was required by my work. And if it was required by my work, I would probably change jobs anyways, because I disagree with that whole methodology. I learn for the sake of learning. I want to learn how to do something. I go out and I figure it out, whether I'm paying for college courses. I just completed a course at the University of Singapore in electronics. Because I have projects that I needed to learn electronics better at. I go out and I watch YouTube videos. I take Udemy courses. I do EDX courses. I do whatever it is that I need to do to learn something. And I don't care that there's a piece of paper associated with it. I don't care there's a degree associated with it. Knowledge is what I crave, and that's what I search out.
It's interesting to me that certifications, also we are going to comment on the hacker shirt because the comment is kind of amazing. One of the interesting things with certifications is like, when was the last time you did a cert? Like I feel like if you go on YouTube and you type in like how to learn hacking or anything like that, over and over it's what hacker cert do I get? What cert do I get? What cert do I get? And it's interesting because when I actually think about it, the last cert I did was in high school, I think. Like it was maybe not high school, but it was a long time ago. And there's never been any need or want after I got my initial job to ever have a cert again. Now, there's been times where I'm like, ooh, this would be good knowledge to go learn. But since getting my first job, experience has absolutely trumped my degree. It's absolutely trumped my certifications. Like, have you ever, now that you've like gotten them and you've gotten your job, has there ever been a mention of them? Has there ever been like, oh, you should go get this cert?
So I know that I've just been bashing on like degrees and certifications. One very important thing about those is they are a framework. That framework allows you to know what you need to study and what you need to learn. My last cert was probably 7 or 8 years ago. But before that, my certs were all from when I was in high school and starting out in college. But they are great frameworks. I will go look at the CEH framework of what I should learn to be a certified ethical hacker, and I will go in depth and learn those things. And I may even take some CEH courses so that I can learn from those. But my goal isn't the degree. My goal is to figure out what it is that I need to learn about that topic, and then learn that and deep dive where I feel comfortable. There was also one other quick comment on using command line switches and Googling those. Even my own programs that I write, I build in help files into those programs because I can't remember the crap that I put in there that I coded 100% by myself and use daily. I will go and I'll run the man page on my own code just to figure out what command line switch I'm supposed to be using for what scenario.
There's a saying in software development: write your code like the person who comes after you to maintain it has a shotgun and knows where you live. And
Yes!
the joke inside of the joke is that 6 months after you write something, you are that person who owns a shotgun and knows where you live, because you're not going to remember why you did things the way you did them 6 months ago. I've definitely had the experience of like, who the hell wrote this? Get blame. Never mind.
Oh, yeah.
No one look at the blame file. It was definitely me,
But
right? So
this is
um,
one of those.
go ahead.
I was gonna just mention the blame thing. Is when I found that out with Git, like, so many hacking tools and whatnot are created by like real people, not companies. When the idea is that the actual the actual technical term in Git is blame. Who am I blaming for this mistake? And as a comment on the code comments, oftentimes those get stripped out with like modern compilers and things like that. They get pulled out. But one of the best things to do in web pen testing, and like if you have Burp or any of them, that is search for comments, because you get to see all of those comments on the front end. And there's story after story of like, what my favorite comment was, this is a hack and this should be gone by January 4th, 1994. And it's now like 6 years later, and you're like, what? Or 8 years later at the time. And it was like, you guys are nuts. Like, and this is the comment after comment after comment. Right, Gourry?
What?
Yeah, no, I definitely, stuff like that is all over every code base. There's no such thing as a pristine code base. The thing Gulo said, where these things are certifications and even degrees to a certain extent are good frameworks for learning. I completely agree with that. And where certs are, I think, useful, and this idea of continuing education is useful, is when you want to gain knowledge about something that is new, right? Like if you have no exposure to network anything and all you want to do is understand how the TCP/IP stack works, Network Plus is fine. It's not going to be something that's useful in your day-to-day unless you're doing like development on a router or development on, the actual stack. But it is good to know so that you can debug problems when, you're writing software that implements something like that and you start seeing a SYN storm or something like that. But getting ahead of myself, or going down too much of a tangent, like today it would be useful to go get like a certification in AI, because AI is so new that you wouldn't even really know where to start. Where are you going to start? Pull up a 500-page textbook from the 80s that explains how neural nets work? That's not useful. Right? You want to figure out how to hit the ground running and jump in with the modern frameworks that people are actively using. There's courses out there that will teach you how to do that. There's also YouTube videos, and there's also online tutorials and stuff. But if you want to learn the underlying thing, you can use these things as stepping stones, right, to get exposure to something new. And I have to say, like, I've been considering this myself, where I'm like, where do I find a course in AI that isn't going to start from like the basics of computer science, and that lets me jump in because I have a lot of exposure. Gulo and I are right now are taking an electronics class for a project that he's working on and that I want to help with. This, like, it is really, really difficult. I found, like, I have no background in electrical engineering whatsoever. And if you want to understand the basis of doing electronics design, you need some exposure to that. Well, it was really hard looking around in courses and certifications to find one that wasn't basically like, we're going to start from ground zero and assume you don't even know Boolean logic whatsoever, versus they're going to jump in and assume you know all of the electrical engineering background terminology, and we're just going to use it as if you know all those things. Like, trying to find something in the middle ground is really, really difficult. And I think that's kind of what certifications are trying to fill the hole on, is you may have some exposure to building computers. You may have some exposure to doing this. So target this level cert or this level cert. If you want to learn Linux administration, there's an assumption that you have some exposure to the command line. You know how to do that, right? And you want to learn how to use SE Linux more advanced, stuff like that. So I think there is a use in this idea of continuing education and utilizing these certs to get exposure to new areas. Where I think it becomes a money trap is when companies try to look at these certification stacks and go, in order to get this job or this position or this raise, you must have these 20 certifications, and that makes you a qualified XYZ, which that's not how that works. That's not how any of that works. Like that just means you have exposure to all of these things. That doesn't mean you're going to be effective. It doesn't mean you're going to enjoy any of that. It just means that you've put some checks in a box, and now you are technically qualified for this job.
Yeah, actually,
So
I want to call out two cool tips that actually happened here. One was going and finding the syllabus to a cert and then using that as your own learning path. I think is fantastic. Things like offensive security and a lot of CompTIA's ones have their cert list and their syllabus, and it gives line by line, these are the topics, these are the tools, and that can give you a great jumping off point. The other thing Gulo said, which I think is just an awesome idea, is if there's certs you're working on or working towards, you can, especially if you're just trying to get a job, throw those on your resume as expected date by blah, blah, blah. Because one of the biggest things certs accomplish is if you're going towards a giant company, like an enterprise company, they get 7,000, 8,000, 15,000 resumes. And there's no easy way. Like, even if you're an awesome person, there's no way you throw out resumes for legitimately the dumbest reasons. Because I've hired people when I was at General Electric, and I threw out resumes where it was like, the font's too small, can't read this. Like, and you throw them out for like the dumbest reasons, but you have like 15,000. And one of the quickest ways was just searching them for keywords like OSCP, CEH, whatever. And it would just be as you'd get rid of tons of resumes. And that little hack he said would keep you in that list. I mean, we went and did a whole live stream on this. The ultimate hack is just reaching out to the hiring manager, say, hey, can you pull my resume? And that will immediately get to the front. But I wanted to call out that one specifically because it's such a good one.
So Gourry brought up, I recommended an electronics course, and we are working on a project for a badge for DEF CON, for the Darknet at DEF CON. But I'm taking 4 electronics courses right now. I have 2 EDX courses that I'm taking, one from MIT, one from the University of Singapore, and I have 2 Udemy courses that I'm taking. When I go to learn something, I don't go and learn, I won't take one class in it. I will go take several classes. And I'm not an electrical engineer. I know basic electronics. I know Ohm's law, Kirchhoff's principles. I know like the basic stuff, and I can design circuits, and I've made circuits that do different things. And I've worked in production facilities before, but I'm not an electrical engineer. I'm taking the courses because I'm working on something that I'm going to give out to the community. And when I give it out to the community, if someone approaches me and says, this badge is really cool, how does it work? And I'm like, oh, you plug power in this side, you plug ground in this side, and it go blink, blink. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to explain it to them. And if they don't understand my explanation, I want to be able to change my explanation so I can help them to understand how it works, which is why I'm taking multiple courses from multiple different areas, because they all have a different way of explaining it. And if I know it well enough myself that I can teach someone, that's the goal that I'm trying to hit. I'm not doing this for my job. I'm not doing this for work. I'm doing this for the hacker community in general. And because I'm curious as crap and I want to learn everything that I can learn about everything that I can learn. So that's my version of CPE. That's my version of CEU. I don't care if I get certifications from it. Squiddy P had posted that he's getting close to his degree. Congrats on that. I may have enough credits for a degree. I don't know. I don't actually care. I would have to go to all of the different colleges that I've attended, all the classes I've taken, and then see if I can conglomerate them into some weird degree. But I don't need that piece of paper. It doesn't matter to me.
So I think the important thing here in all of that is that Gulo is doing all of that because there is an intent behind learning all of those things. There's a natural curiosity to pick up like information about things, and then you get to be creative with the information that you pick up. And all of that information in some way may or may not be useful, but the process of learning it can also be fun, right? And this is where it's the reason why we say like certifications and even a degree to some extent can be a money trap is because if you don't have that mentality going into it, where you are learning it for the check in the box as opposed to learning it for the sake of learning it and enjoying the process of learning it and figuring out how to do something fun or useful with it. If you're just there to get the check in the box, it's going to be completely useless to you and you will not learn anything. You may memorize stuff, but you will not learn anything.
Oh, you're hitting it home. So I see so many people go through, and especially with like the CompTIA certs, to be able to get certain jobs, people will literally go do the test dumps, go get the checkbox, memorize it for the weekend, get the cert, get the job, and then suck at the job because all they did was pencil whip it instead of actually learn the content. So the example of being able to go through to the Security Plus, some of them were really easy. You could pencil whip in a weekend. Some got harder. And then the fact is that people are like, oh, here's just this test dump. Do you know why you're answering the questions the way that you are? And if you're not learning it to learn the content so you can be good at your job because you want the knowledge, that's where the difference becomes, in my opinion, the weightedness between different certifications. If you can pencil whip it, it's not as valuable, in my opinion. If it's a live test or you actually have to do something on a box, then it makes a huge difference because you have to actually apply the knowledge that you had to get that end result. And there are certain tests that do that. And I think that's why Silk has his reasons why he likes to go with his certs. And then I have different reasons like I like to go with my certs that I suggest.
I think I just want to add one last thing, which is, there's this old saying that if like you're cheating, you're cheating yourself, right? And that's kind of the point here. But really, the takeaway from these things is that if you're asking the question whether or not a degree or a cert is useful or worth the time, you have to answer that question for yourself. Why do you want it? Are you getting it just so you can get a job? If that's the case, are you going to, like, monetary things aside, if you're doing it to get to the job because you need to make money, that is a totally valid reason to do it. Go for it, run away with it. As long as you understand you have to learn to use those skills rather than just get the check in the box. But if you pencil whip it, as Gator said, you may find on the other side that even if you pick things up and you're able to be a junior or have some effect in the job, you may hate the job, right? And then you're not going to want to do any of these things, and you're going to dislike the entire field. Like, so this is one of the things that certs do not give you, this opportunity that college does. College gives you the opportunity to figure out you don't like something.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
Because you're able to sit down over the course of a semester, take 4 to 5 courses and figure out, I don't want to major in English. I don't want to or maybe like all of a sudden you get exposed to linguistics and computer science and you're like, I want to do natural language processing. That sounds really cool, right? Like it gives you the opportunity to go through a bunch of domains without any distractions from, I have to deliver this because I need to make $1, right? So that's the usefulness of college. And that would be the pitch that I would say, if you're going to go to college, utilize that opportunity to branch out to as many things as possible and be open to, people go in and say like, I want to go into cybersecurity. Be open to taking an embedded engineering course and then maybe finding out you like to do embedded engineering instead of reverse engineering and vulnerability research, because you may find that you actually take a course in vulnerability research and hate it. And that's okay. You have the opportunity to switch, and it is not, you shouldn't consider that a failure. If that is the case, you should consider that a success because you learned you didn't like something. That's valuable.
I think it's interesting because when we talked about this, like the steps, like get going, get good, get smart, is like the get going. That's the whole purpose of it, is like just trying a lot of different things to find out, like, well, say, what type of hacker are you, which is so ironic to say because of freaking Gator's shirt. If you've been noticing this whole stream, Gator's shirt has been flipping back and forth because I'm going through all the settings and mirroring it. And the reason why I've been mirroring it is, I'm going to go over to Gator right now, is because this is not the reality of this shirt. It's not hacker. it's like I don't even know racker. It's backwards on purpose. And you're muted right now, Gator. It's backwards on purpose, and it's been messing with me this entire time because I've been going through flicking it. And he finally messaged me in our chat and said, "Oh no, it's actually backwards on purpose." And the reason for that, Gator, is what?
Because you're supposed to look in the mirror and see the hacker who you want to be. So yes, take reality and you got to twist it to make sure that you're obtaining your goals that you're looking for. And you get some weird looks, and some people get psyched out because I'm flipping cameras, but
I've been flipping them. The funniest part about the camera flipping is I don't have to do it for one scene. I have to do it for every scene you're in, which is, it doesn't matter who I flip to. I have to do it each time. So I fix them all. And then halfway through the stream, he's like, "Hey guys, this is actually supposed to be backwards." But it's such a, it's just perfect for the stream because it's what type of hacker do you want to be? And a lot of it comes down to like figuring out a lot of these things. Now, something a junior of mine actually told me about, which is the rubber duck principle. Have any of you heard of this? Because I had never heard of it before.
Yeah. Rubber ducky programming.
Yeah. Can you explain it? Because it was awesome.
Yeah, rubber ducky programming is, and it's kind of the same idea as pair programming. And pair programming is sitting next to someone and explaining to them what you are trying to do with your program. And you will find that unless you can explain what you want to do in this next section in a sentence, maybe two, but really you should be able to say it in about a sentence, that you're going to realize that like you need to break down the program more. Rubber ducky debugging is the actual phrase where you have a problem and sometimes you don't have a human there to bounce ideas off of. So you keep a rubber ducky on your desk and you explain to the rubber ducky, and I mean it like out loud, you explain to the rubber ducky what it is you are seeing and what it is you're experiencing and the data that you have. And that usually is enough to kickstart you into having ideas of how to fix it or having an epiphany of as to what's going on. Where you're like, well, if I compile the program with optimization 3 on, I see this behavior. And when I compile the program with optimization 0 on, I see this behavior. Well, what does the optimizations do? Well, the optimizations may cache memory or it may get rid of cached memory. And as a result, it may use cached memory inside of a register. And as a result, if that register, if you're accessing volatile data that may change on instruction to instruction, you may be using stale data. And it's like, oh, okay, hold on. How do I test that? And you explain to the rubber ducky how you might go about testing it. And then you do that thing, right? That's the whole idea.
Yeah. So this is actually a great point. So when somebody approaches me and says, I want to be a hacker, I send them the book, How to Fell a Tree. That's my go-to hacker book that I send to everyone who says I want to be a hacker. Saying I want to be a software engineer, saying I want to work with computers. It's too broad of a spectrum. You can't learn it all. I try to learn it all and I fail miserably at it, but I try to learn as much as I can. So knowing something, I want to be a hacker because I want to crack passwords or I want to do this. Having a project that you're working on and working towards helps you, in my opinion, to a lot more than just, I want to have general knowledge about X. And then general knowledge about X means you're just going to go read a book. You're going to get bored. You're going to watch YouTube videos. You're going to get bored. You're not going to learn anything from it. But having a project of I want to learn to crack passwords. I want to learn to crack websites. I want to learn to write reports. And going and working on those projects will actually help you to learn things and grow far more than I have to read this 600-page manual because that's what I need to do to learn something. Very few people can do that. And usually the ones that can do that are slightly psycho.
I think it's everything with a purpose, though. Like when you're learning something, what is the purpose to learning it? Because you're right, the field is far too broad. But even if you get specific, like let's go, okay, we want to do Linux. Like I want to be a pen tester. Great. Do you want to be web technologies? Do you want to be network technologies? Do you want to be cloud? Oh, you want to be cloud. Great. So we have Azure, AWS, Google Cloud. We have serverless platforms. We have cross-platform. We have Snowflake. We have all these other cloud platforms which go across everything. Cool. Which one do you want to be an expert in? AWS? Cool. Go down AWS. Well, AWS has all number of services. Do you want to be an identity access management AWS expert? Do you want to be a role-based? Like, you can go to any one of these individual services within AWS. Like, this whole entire field, you can go down, and this is like, me and Gourry spent an hour talking about this, where you become a unique snowflake in this field. And I actually legitimately love the term snowflake because it's so perfect for this field. I am a unique snowflake pen tester because I am the only one who has my unique background. And when I learn something new, I'm going to shift it. I'm going to sift it through all the experiences I have and find something which is unique. And that's something to keep in mind. It's really, really easy to compare yourself to other people in this field. And you go, oh my goodness, they are so much smarter than me. And you realize, there's different expertise there. Like, Gourry is going to just completely decimate me in anything virtualization technology. And I'm more than likely going to decimate him in almost anything pen testing, kind of, because he's going to have things that clobber me and things that I clobber you. But we're both idiot children in so many aspects of our field. Gourry?
Let me just meter with that with, like, I disagree with the standpoint of saying, like, we're going to clobber each other. It's just that I'm going to depend on you much more to operate within your specialty, and you would depend on me to operate much more in my specialty. And what you learn as you get further in and you get more specialized, is that's actually perfectly okay. It's okay to be like, I don't know anything about that, but I know who does, so let me go get you that guy. Right? And that's how you build networks over time. But I wanted to bring up, go ahead.
We're 4 hackers on a stream. We each have our specialties. We each do random weird things. We each research and build other random things. If I need help with something, I will message Gourry, I will message Gator or Silk or any number of people in the community, post on Twitter, and I will ask for help. Actually, I really suck at asking for help. But when I get really stuck, I will generally ask for help. And I know people that I can reach out to. And if Gator doesn't know the answer, Gator has a far bigger social net than I do. He may know somebody who knows the answer, and he may be able to actually help me with that answer. There's one point on the rubber ducky thing. I use the rubber ducky. I don't actually have one on my desk right now. I usually just talk to myself or the voices in my head. One issue that I have is I work on technologies that don't necessarily exist. I invent or build a lot of things that aren't mainstream. And when you Google things that aren't mainstream, you get 0 results back. And then you're like, how do I solve this problem? And I will talk to a baby Yoda in the back. I will talk to the wall. I'll talk to empty pill bottles, Rubik's cubes. I will and I will go talk. I'll walk out into the forest and I will talk to a tree for 3 hours to try to solve a problem. And those trees are smart. I'm like super smart.
Gourry, you had something you were saying. I want to throw it back to you.
Yeah, no, I wanted to go back to a comment that somebody made earlier on, which was Praxis. He said, some course materials and books do more as I have a place to look this info up later. That's actually what you are trying to learn especially in college. This is why I said very early on, the intent of college is not to teach you how to be a professional in the context of a job. The intent of college is to give you the tools you need to look up the info later yourself, right? And to understand how to do some amount of that research. The intent of like a master's degree or a PhD is to teach you how to push the boundaries of research and start to do things like what Gulo is explaining, where there is nothing online and you have to formulate the tests and the research and put together something that can be peer reviewed, right? Like that's what like your bachelor's degree is to teach you how to teach yourself. And then like the master's and the PhD, at least conceptually, is supposed to teach you how to research and do work that may not have a manual in existence for. Right. At least that's the intent. Reality is it's way, way, way more complicated than that. And, you know, there's a crossover between working in industry and being a pure research scientist and trying to find that crossover so that you can actually do something useful is important. But yeah, no, I wanted to just bring attention to that comment.
Yeah, actually,
So-
this is a great comment, and then I think Gator's going to just jump on this one all over the place. I'm going to throw that comment back on. Is learning practice? That's the same thing. It's a hard learning to navigate documentation is remarkably difficult. One, because not everything is documented, and then you have to learn how to create documenting. And part of this comes down to sharing projects and writing them up, explaining them to the rubber ducky. But also, I don't know why I don't have a rubber ducky. I don't know. I'm pointing.
You have the faces on your walls. What your faces?
Yeah, talking to my inner balcony Muppets is how I explain it. But I think learning how to do proper documentation and sharing that, and I think Gator's probably the best person to talk about that.
So I love your guys' points, because the conclusion came down to, yes, if you can do this in college and it helps teach you that way, great. Don't start there. You can start right now. Document what you're doing and share it online. So many people who are doing cool projects, but they don't talk about it, or they go through and they're not sharing it online. Whether that's a blog, whether that's a podcast, whether that's a video, find your media and or your format and share that out. Because if you're also trying to break into the field and you don't have those certs yet, documenting what you're doing in your lab. I'm studying for XYZ. Here's what I built in my lab. Here's what I'm currently working on. And putting that onto a blog post is how I got my start. And because they saw, hey, he can document, it's a little rough. There's some grammar issues and some spelling issues, but the technical content is there and he's sharing it. I highly encourage other people to do that. And everybody has their own opinions on how to do something. There's more than one way to do a thing, especially when it comes to Linux. So share how you're going through and creating it and how it's working for you. Both your wins and your losses, right? Something doesn't work. You could save somebody hours of time by saying, hey, I tried this. Here's the methodology that I tried to do it, and it failed. I may have to try this another 6 months. If you're looking down this path, if you get further, please let me know and be able to share back to the open community.
This is like one of those funny things on Stack Overflow, which it triggers me when you go and see someone say a comment like this. I had XYZ problem, and then they never post back. Or like the one step worse, which makes your blood like boil, is they go, I had this massive problem, the exact problem you have, edit, figured it out. And then there's just no answer. There's no remediation, and you just lose your mind. Oh, it's horrible. I think this is probably a good spot, though, to end it, is talking about documentation. I do think that is the most important part of cybersecurity, is documenting, because that is the best way for other people to learn. And again, you're going to be pissed at yourself when it's your code and 6 months later you're like, what kind of idiot programmed this? And then you check the blame file and you're like, this kind of idiot. And I think that's where I want to pull closing thoughts on. Gator, where do you want to leave us?
Hey, so share your work. Talk about what you're doing. Be excited about it, because you're going to excite other people. And share your documentation. You got to learn it. Unfortunately, in any field, when it comes to the computer science side of the house or InfoSec, you're going to have to document. I thought I was just going to be able to do hands-on stuff. It was going to be awesome. No, there's a lot of documentation. So get good, son, and go love your hacker family.
Your rubber ducky doesn't need to be a rubber ducky. I talk to Henry the Husky when I need a pair programming partner. So definitely use that technique. And just remember, like, certs and college are useless unless you are enjoying it or trying to find something you want to do. So, go into those with the intent of doing something with it rather than just getting a job. Otherwise, you may find that you hate that job.
Gulo?
A piece of paper is just a piece of paper. It may mean something to you. It may create memories, and that's fine. But a certification or a degree is a piece of paper. The knowledge you gain, the way that you learn, and how you apply that knowledge is what matters, not the piece of paper.
I think with so much of this, it's very difficult to know like what resources to do. Hopefully this was like helpful to you, but ultimately like there are no experts in cybersecurity. Really, it's going to take time. And I think when you're starting out, the more you can explore, the more you can find the things that like, here's the circle of things I enjoy. Here's the circle of things I can get paid for. And then you find that little piece in the middle where it's like that nirvana like state. Overall, thanks for watching and hack on.